Welcome to Real Estate Coaching Radio, starring award-winning real estate coaches and #1 international best-selling authors, Tim and Julie Harris. This is the #1 daily radio show for realtors looking for a no BS, authentic, real-time coaching experience. What's really working in today's market, how to generate more leads, make more money, and have more time for what you love in your life. And now your hosts, Tim and Julie Harris.
3, 2, 1, and we're back, and it is July the 14th. We are broadcasting live from Jackson Hole, Wyoming.
Indeed.
Yeah, and we've had a really fantastic adventure so far.
Yes.
And yesterday marked the actual first week we've been on the road since we landed in
week
Dallas.
1.
So what do you think, 7 days so far?
I think we covered a lot of ground, and I'm happy to not be driving, even though you did a great job and delivered us safely.
Including the ticket on the way here.
We haven't mentioned that yet, have we?
No, it's on Instagram.
Going to share that or
I
not.
put it on Instagram. No, I don't care. I mean, yeah.
Well, I mean, it was kind of funny because, miles and miles and miles of open road.
It makes no sense.
It makes no sense. And just hundreds of thousands of acres on either side of you. Yeah. And you were driving safely, but here nor there, it is what it is.
Well,
but you got your inaugural ticket.
Hopefully no more.
Hopefully
in Wyoming, you can see, especially where we were driving, I could see probably,
I think we were looking at Montana from the middle of the state.
You could see for miles where we came from, miles where we're going, and you could see just everywhere around. There was virtually no topography, right?
No, that's true.
And then the road just got a little oscillating, a little, there's a little bit of a rise, and I had to go and pass some cars. And then by the time I was slowing down from having passed these cars, there was a cop that was basically positioned on the bottom of the rise, of course, expecting people to basically pop over the rise and flipped on
which you did.
Which I did, exactly. So I think I made his day. But, I got to thinking how efficient that ticket was, too. So
he was in and out, and it took him like 10 minutes. He signed to the next guy.
I don't think we were sitting there for 10 minutes, Julie. I bet it was like 5 minutes.
Long enough for him to write down insurance and stuff.
So the old thing the cop says when they pull you over, not that I've been pulled over before, but what they say is, do you know why I pulled you over, sir? He didn't even say that.
No, he just cut right to it.
He just came to the window and said, driver's license, insurance, ran back, did the whatever, came back with the ticket, and just gave us the ticket. That was it.
Yep.
It was like no conversation.
All done. Yes.
Well, but it is insane, though, that the speed limit's, because it used to be 80 miles per hour, and you Googled it, and it turned out that they dropped the speed limit in Wyoming and in the rural areas like we were driving through from 80 to 70.
Yes.
And they then also said that they added a whole bunch of
enforcement, and we did see a lot of extra enforcement. We did,
especially in Wyoming. So for those of you who are driving through Wyoming, be aware that they are definitely trying to make up for lost revenue from the COVID year. And they're
clearly,
I think they're definitely going after anybody with non-Wyoming plates, but such is the way.
But speaking of which, a special shout out to Mr. Yancey Perkins, who sells in this area. And now we were pretty clear before, but now we're crystal clear why your truck has so many miles on it. And shout out to you because, things are definitely spread out, and I know you sell them all big and small, but nice job out here in Wyoming to Yancey.
Well, to all of our coaching clients, really, that have been messaging us through Instagram and giving us suggestions on places that we should stop and see. And we've picked up a lot of the great ideas, especially, little restaurants and holes in the wall places that we didn't know about. This made this trip extra special. So thank you very much for your continued support. And so we think, and we are putting together a website with, essentially where all the pictures are going to be, and along with a U.S. map. Did I show it to you, Julie?
No, not yet.
Let me see if this is it. No, that's not. But I'll show it to you when it's done. No, this might be. No, I'll show it to you when it's done.
Okay.
But when you see the map of what we're doing,
it does look crazy.
Had I seen that prior to us leaving, I probably wouldn't have wanted to do it.
Yeah, probably not.
Because
we're only in week 1.
Right. We're going to go through probably at least 20 different states.
I think so.
And we're essentially going up from where we are now. We're going to go up through Montana. Then we're going to drive towards Washington State. We're going to drive back through Oregon. We're going to stop off at a ton of places in California because we've got a ton of coaching clients there and EXP folks, frankly. We're probably going to go all the way down to San Diego. It's not been determined yet. We've been invited to go to the zoo and things like that. And Zoe would certainly love that. And we're hoping maybe to take Zoe to Disney World if she's going to be well behaved. Are you going to be well behaved? You can say yes.
Yes.
Okay, now go
All
back.
right, scram.
Yeah, exactly. So if that all works out, then we're going to be driving back through, just, the whole rest of the
rest
country.
of the country, really.
And we're going to go to Ohio, and then we're going to drive down. We're hoping to stay at the Greenbrier for a couple nights. And we're going to drive to Murphy, North Carolina, where we have a little cabin, and back down to Atlanta, and then back home.
Indeed. So, and,
2 months.
Speaking of, we talked to you guys a lot about expanding your exposure, or
That's what we're doing.
suffering from lack of exposure sometimes. And that can be just a little thing. We were looking at a menu today, and it had
elk
and bison and all kinds of interesting things. So, it's nice to get out and do different things,
Well,
obviously.
of course, we always study the real estate markets. We talked yesterday
yes.
about the market where we discovered essentially were high-tech hobbit homes, in
I
the
know,
middle
that
of
stuff's
nowhere.
crazy.
And here we were looking at the real estate, and real estate here is about $1,000 plus or minus a square foot.
For in-town stuff.
And I didn't know much about Jackson Hole. I knew it was really popular with celebrity types and whatnot, and I could totally see why.
Oh, yeah, it's a great town. Lots to do, and we don't even ski, but we can appreciate the rest of it. And if you do ski, kudos to you, because, oh my goodness, are those ski mountains ginormous.
Yeah, they're basically, they're
It-
vertical.
It's like, it looks like something from a cartoon, or maybe the Olympics, or I don't even know what. You see how I don't even have a comparison, because I'm not a
Exactly.
skier.
Well, so anyway, we're having a great time, and we do appreciate all your support. And this is our way of trying to directly connect with as many of you as we can. But if it's just digitally where you're giving us suggestions, do please follow us on Instagram at Tim and Julie Harris. And we're reading all the messages and trying to reply to everything. And, this is something, Julie just said it really. It's basically getting out from making yourself a little bit uncomfortable, which I think we're sufficiently doing, right?
Indeed.
And then putting yourself in a position where you're going to see lots of different things, because it really adds to your tapestry of who you are as a person, right?
And we're going to Teton tomorrow, and our promise to at least possibly see bear and elk and bison and all kinds of different things. So we'll see. Maybe we'll have some interesting pictures to post for all of you tomorrow.
Yeah, especially with Miss Zoe seeing all these things for the first time. I mean, she's never been, yesterday or the day before was this first time she's been in a forest, for gosh sakes.
I know.
I mean, think about
crazy.
that. So it's incredible. So yeah, we are going to continue on our sojourn, and thank you for staying connected to us. And now we're going to pick up where we left off yesterday. And we were talking about this article, and we did post a link to the article on timandjulieharris.com. I think that link also got syndicated to all your normal podcast listing widgets. And the article was written by Sean Iddings.
Iddings,
you think? Yeah.
Possibly.
It's called My Highest Conviction Stock Idea. And from the best I can tell, I read a little bit about him on someplace. And he's essentially a professional money manager type. And he talked about a little bit about some of the other stocks that he suggested people purchase. And I think he actually runs money for people, like a little, I'm not going to call him a hedge fund guy, but that definitely is similar to what he does. And he right now is basically going all in on EXPI, which is the ticker symbol for the company that holds EXP and Virbela. So let me just give you guys a little, I think, nice warning. We are going to be talking about EXP today. We're talking about EXP from a perspective of this Sean guy in the article he wrote. Now, and just to be critical of some of the things he wrote, not all of it's correct. And some of we're going to actually skip the part that isn't correct. He was giving an example of basically how to compare EXP to Redfin, and his math was wrong. And so we're going to skip over that. So if you're reading the article and you're wondering why we're not talking about it, it's because, again, his assumptions are not accurate. But his math, essentially the conclusions are accurate, but the math and how he gets there is not accurate. And frankly, I was kind of glad to see, because it validates the fact that this guy is definitely not a real estate guy.
Well, that's true. I mean, this is not an unusual mistake for people outside of our industry to miscalculate some of this stuff.
Right. In essence, his comparison of a Redfin agent, I'll just summarize it, being on salary, if they sell 25 houses versus an EXP agent who sells 25 houses is obviously on 100% commission. He was essentially drilling down on what the difference between what those two agents would make. And it was extraordinary, because obviously he was used, and this is where I thought it was a little bit too much of a stretch. He was saying that, if you can imagine that if the average sale of the, EXP and the Redfin agent, he was using $800,000, which isn't really realistic. It should be more like $350,000. And then some of the other assumptions he had about the commission structure, he was inaccurate about that as well. And I also thought Julie and I shouldn't be talking about commission structures on our podcast, because obviously that can get you in some thorny waters with all the legal, ramifications. So we're going to skip all that. That's the bottom line.
Indeed.
But we are going to get to the next part. And Julie, we're skipping all this, right?
Yes.
Okay, so now here's the next premise of what he's talking about. And again, I want to drill down on why this is interesting to us, because it's very rare in any of our lifetimes that we're able to essentially be there at the very formidable stage of a company and say that you were part of its growth. And to say that you are one of the ones that maybe weren't the very, very first people in, certainly we weren't, but you were there while the arrows were still flying, in essence, right? And the land wasn't quite settled. I'm using all these out west analogies because where we are. But right now what's happening is you're seeing EXP has passed its I think it's formidable years for the most part.
Yep.
And now it's maturing into a really, frankly, going to be what we think and what Sean evidently thinks is going to be the leader in global real estate. And let me start out by telling you something you didn't know.
Yes.
Today, EXP, 59,000 agents, right? And so that happened today.
Yeah,
and it's
milestone.
Still, right, it's still, EXP will probably have around 75 to 85,000 agents based on its current net growth at the end of this year. Now, that's never happened before in the history of real estate, right? And so now the reason that, again, we were originally attracted to EXP is because it was essentially the completion of what our mission was, professionally speaking. We could help you guys run a successful, profitable real estate business. We could show you how to sell. We could essentially take care of your business everywhere from, essentially the lead generation all the way to everything that you could possibly want to have to understand and deal with. Maybe you want to build a team or a brokerage, we've got you covered. Maybe you're wanting to run a small, like you and maybe two assistants, you're wanting to run high profit margins.
Learn to systematize all that
exactly.
good stuff.
Learn when to staff up people.
The skills.
You guys can read our book. It's still it's still a bestseller, and I think it's going to be for years on Amazon and on all your other favorite book resellers. It's called Harris Rules. So make sure you pick up that book just to get a real good snapshot of what we're talking about. But at the end of the day, when Julie and I would take a coaching client, I used the example yesterday of Chuck Williamson. We would basically help him sell more houses, make more money, and all those things. But there was still something missing from what we were able to actually get this guy or any of our coaching clients to really the full benefit of what we were showing him how to do, because of the fact that we couldn't really control what happened after they started applying the systems that Julie and I have created as part of our coaching program. Now, what EXP has done, so in other words, the rubber wasn't quite meeting the road because, okay, so, Bob, who we teach to sell lots of houses, he sells lots of houses, he makes tons of money, he becomes famous in his marketplace, all these other things, but that's no guarantee that Bob's actually going to ever be rich where his money works for him and he doesn't have to work for his money again. So Bob can have years pass where he can be making lots of money and he becomes that household name, the mythical, most famous agent, best known agent in his marketplace. But at the end of the day, Bob might not have any retirement, or Bob might not have any money set aside for a rainy day or sufficient to cover some of the rainy days that we've been experiencing over the last 20 years. Do I have to remind anyone about the pandemic? Do I have to remind anyone of the housing crash? And so EXP fixes that, right? EXP gives agents the opportunity not just to keep more of their money that they're earning from real estate sales, but also to create multiple streams of very viable income. And that's what ultimately led Julie and I to want to align with EXP that we did in January of 2019. So now the next question everyone asks is, how can EXP give so much to the agents? And I'm not talking commission splits. I'm talking what we talked about yesterday, which is with regards to the stock awards and with regards to the revenue share. So Julie, I'm teeing you up.
Yes, so there's really 3 points here. This has some bad language that might take too much editing, so I'm going to do the top 3 points here. So how can EXP give so much? Simple. EXPI has centralized administration and no physical offices. It's all done in a virtual world created by Virbela, which is, by the way, now owned by EXP. So that's a big point. A lot of these guys have never run an office or paid the bills that come along with a brokerage, but it is not inexpensive, especially in some of the major markets.
Well, our whole coaching business has always been online.
That's right. And, I want to make a good point about this too. EXP was born online.
Yep.
It's not a company that had to convert to being in the cloud.
So you're actually bringing up something really good. I get the question when I'm talking to folks about joining EXP as part of our revenue share group. I get the question about what do you think and he talks about this in this article, so I don't want to get too far ahead of it. But people ask me, well, what's to prevent other people from copying?
Sure.
What's to prevent Remax from copying or Keller Williams from copying? The answer is nothing except this really big thing called their franchise model. And that's where I think he talks about next, or that's what he's talking about. In essence, and we described this in great detail in yesterday's podcast, but in essence what EXP did, what Glenn Sanford did in his genius, is he basically said, let's not do a franchise, let's do an online virtual brokerage where there's one brokerage where there's, and the money that's being right now paid to the franchises and the region holders and all these, the sort of institutionalized expenses that go along with a franchise, not to mention the physical locations, the expense associated with that. What Glenn thought was, I got a great idea. There's and he says this too, there's two things agents are not great at. They're not great at saving money, and they're not great at paying their taxes. So what if I could fix a situation? And I have heard him also say about saving for retirement. So he fixes all of that. And what he's doing is the money that would normally go to paying all the franchise fees and all the expenses. Again, listen to yesterday's show because we break it down fairly well. That all goes back to the agents.
Yes.
And that's something no one's ever done before. And going back to why Julie and I originally got involved, is because everyone gave lip service, though they don't do this so much anymore. We're an agent-centric brokerage. That was a thing for years. Okay, so what does that actually mean? What does it mean to be an agent-centric brokerage? The answer is it meant nothing until you look what Glenn Sanford did with EXP.
Which is literally financially agent-centric.
Yes.
And looking out for agents' futures. Mm-hmm. And there's even an element, I kind of like this from a coaching standpoint, there's even an element of, it's like the stock awards, an award is given to you. You don't have to purchase it. The stock awards are done without you even asking. It's like he's got your back. He's almost doing some forced savings, which is kind of cool. Let's see. So the next point is no physical offices and centralized administration. Cut significant costs. EXPI passes those savings on to the agent, as we just said. Next thing, another contributing factor is agent acquisition cost. What is that? That is the cost of bringing agents into the company. Competitors, for example, like Compass, pay top dollar to sign top producing agents, but EXP pays zero upfront. So why is that important?
Well, that's kind of an interesting, no one talks about that, right?
I know.
And one of so EXP does have a recruiting model, and they pay you on the agents that they recruit. It's called revenue share. We're going to talk about that in a second. I love his next point.
I think we're safe.
By the way, I think we're safe. I didn't unplug anything. Let me make sure. I just dropped the recording device. My fault. Let me make sure it's all good.
You're good.
All right, let me check all of our wires.
Checking.
We're all good.
Proof that it's live.
Still proof that we don't edit it. And I forget what I was about to say.
Let's see. You were
After I had that mini
about,
heart
well,
attack.
we were talking about, the acquisition costs.
Oh, there you go. Thank you. So like Compass spends all this money. It's not just Compass. Other brokerages have done it as well. To spend so for example, Compass might upfront money. They don't do as much as they used to acquire some, basically brand name agent. Okay, great. But what other brokerages and franchises would do is they wouldn't write a check. They might give you office space, or they might basically give you a slightly higher commission. So this whole acquisition cost of agents is something EXP doesn't really have. And that's something, too, which is quite extraordinary. So EXP is on everyone's mind, it seems. And everyone's basically coming around. Some people resist it. Some people are like, tell me more. But there's not a lot in between. Most people are EXP curious. Most people are basically ready to join. They're going to maybe join now, or they're going to join in 6 months. But eventually, everyone's going to have to take a serious look at EXP and really drill down why they're actually not moving forward. Because financially, there's no reason not to move forward.
Absolutely.
Now, someone would say, well, Compass gave me all this money up front. I'm obligated to stay there for 3 years. Well, then you obligated to stay there for 3 years. You made a bargain, right? But ultimately, what EXP has virtually no agent acquisition costs because of the fact that people want to join EXP. So if a brokerage has to pay somebody to join the brokerage, maybe that tells you something about the brokerage itself. Whereas EXP has top producing agents and teams and big brokerages that are lining up to join EXP. You got to ask yourself why, and the answer is, frankly, because it's a hell of a lot better business proposition to both small agents and big agents alike, and brokerages.
That's right,
and teams.
And ultimately that means that the dollar stays with the company so that they then can pass that to the existing EXP agents.
Okay, no, he explained this really well.
Okay.
So here's something else that, frankly, doesn't really come up that often, but it's still an interesting point. So his next point is EXP is not a pyramid scheme or illegal MLM, and that's something that sometimes you see really the detractors for EXP, which
you
are
see
basically
it more on online forums where agents are not really that versed on what we're about to go over, that
Right.
It is not anything even remotely like that.
Mm-hmm.
So shall I read?
Please.
Okay. So according to the FTC, not according to brokers, agents, Tim and Julie, or anybody else, according to the FTC, who regulates this, a pyramid scheme, quote, compels individuals who wish to join to make a payment. Well, yes, EXP compels individuals who wish to join to make a $149 startup fee. Afterwards, EXP compels agents to pay $85 a month to use their platform. But does that mean they're a pyramid scheme? And he uses the example, I mean, Costco compels individuals who wish to join to make a $60 or $120, that's your executive yearly fee, which is paid yearly. Is Costco a pyramid scheme? I would say American Express card charges you usually $250 or $500.
No, it's $600.
I think it's now more.
Yeah,
it's $600. There's lots. I mean, your gym charges you a fee to join. Are they a pyramid scheme?
Well, but here's let's just stop it there for a second,
Yeah.
because again, I don't hear this is really not an issue anymore. That was something that a lot of competitors of EXP were throwing up to try to basically make agents who are going to leave their brokerage afraid to go to EXP.
It's an ignorant objection handler.
Yeah, basically. But really, at the end of the day, you can join EXP and not participate in the revenue share aspect of it. You don't have to recruit a single soul, and EXP is still a home run decision.
They're not going to throw you out.
Right. I think it was something like 40% of all agents that are EXP agents have sponsored at least one person.
Yes.
Don't trip over the cords like I did.
Right. I'm with you.
So that's proof that of the almost 60,000 agents, not everyone wants to or is or has maybe learned how to participate in revenue share. And so that's it, not like, for example, what you'd expect from an MLM.
Well, that's right. So he says, no, that doesn't make Costco, for example, an MLM. The membership fee subsidizes Costco's pricing. The fee incentivizes members to be repeat customers. There's value in that payment, and there's value in EXP's payment as well. One has access to, and this is another thing that they don't know. This is big.
Oh, this is big.
One has access to KV Core. That's a CRM. How many of you guys are paying X amount of dollars for your CRM right now? KV Core usually costs individual agents between $300 and $500 a month. Website creation is included. Automated call, text, email is included, and an extraordinary amount of educational content, which is available 24/7. Very much unlike brick and mortar brokerages.
So that's included, but it's part of your $85 a month fee at EXP. But it's not just a CRM. Basically, it's a lead generation.
Oh, there's all
platform.
kinds of stuff.
Right. And Commissions Inc., those of you who are familiar with some of those systems that are out there, if I understand correctly, and I haven't actually researched this, but I've had other people tell me this, if you were to get the version of KV Core that is given to EXP agents as part of their $85 a month, it would cost somewhere between $800 and $1,000 a month.
That's right.
And so there's agents...
And they don't just give it to you, they train you on how to use it,
Yeah.
too.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
not just
definitely.
like, here, go figure it out.
There's classes you can take
every
and learn
day.
how to lead generate. Matter of fact, I was, again, I've heard this from people that we have in our revenue share group, that they can generate somewhere thing, what was it, like 50 leads per month off KV Core if they just do a minimum amount of optimizing. But if they throw $100 at it a month for some paid advertising, then supposedly they can generate something like 100 to 120 leads per month.
Yes.
I've not personally experienced that. I've not.
I have coaching clients that have not just generated leads, but closed transactions from their generated leads. These are good quality leads. Okay, so should I go on, or do you want to change topics? Let's see. All right. So, accusers will point out that EXP, quote, promises its new members a share of the money taken from every additional member they recruit. Isn't that a sure sign that it's a pyramid scheme? Well, by itself, no. EXP does promise its members a share of the money generated by each additional member. That's called the downline, and it does go 7 levels. But the agent has to perform. This is all based on actually closing sales to get any money to go upstream. That caps at $8,000 per agent per year. So EXP paying out up to half of that commission split. I think the point here, Tim, is that unlike traditional MLM things, this is predicated on actual real estate sales, not on stockpiling product or some other weird thing. Or
his math there is wrong too, but that's okay.
I think it's off a little bit.
It is, but here's really the bottom line. So you can sponsor somebody in order for them to, and essentially, just keep this in mind: 40% of everybody. So you sponsor 10 people at EXP, 4 of those people will most likely sponsor somebody, then 4 of those people and 4 of those people. And the thing that you've got to sort of wrap your mind around is that, generally speaking, the sizes of the groups, once you start sponsoring people, compounds monthly, not annually. So I've seen people, like our group, I just checked today, our group is growing an average of 10% per month net.
Yes.
Per net.
It's amazing.
After attrition.
Yeah.
And that's extraordinary. So that means that our group should double in size this year.
Yes, and that's been very consistent.
Well, we dropped around 8%, 8.4%.
For like what? 1 or
2
months?
Yeah, basically,
right,
exactly.
So it's pretty consistent.
Well, I mean, but the moral of the story is that means that there's people, almost 2,000 agents that are in Julie and I's group, that are sponsoring people, that are making money from revenue share, who have made this. And what we teach agents to do is we teach agents to basically cover, it's essentially an income or a revenue share ladder. And what we show them is, and just think of it in terms of rungs. And we break this down when they are sponsored by us, is we show them the first, essentially write all your personal expenses down. and then break them into categories. And so maybe the first category is your house payment if you have one. Then it's your utilities, and then it's your car payment if you have one. Every one of these rungs represents a specific financial milestone that you're going to try and that you will work towards, essentially covering through revenue share. And most people, when they conceptually, like some of the people that we know at EXP, right, you're just doing extraordinary things with revenue share. It's sort of not, most people can't, it's not really, they can't think like that. So because the numbers are too big. So what we show them how to do is essentially break it down, again, from rung to rung to rung. So, okay, what's your house payment? It's $3,500. Okay, so let's talk about specifically how you're going to get from revenue share completely passively $3,500 a month, or roughly $40,000 a year. And we're going to show you how to do that. We're going to break it down into exactly what you should be doing every single day to work towards that goal, how many people you need, the whole thing. And
it's just a math problem.
But here's really what the miracle of this whole thing is.
Yeah.
It's completely passive.
Mm-hmm.
So once you actually have once you start getting into the habit of sponsoring agents, and I would say that most people, like I said, it's 40% will sponsor at least one person. And the reality of it is that for you to really take a deliberate approach to sponsoring agents. So I'm thinking of all the ones that we've sponsored that have these large groups now.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we have people in Libertas, our group that is sponsored, that have in their groups now 500-600 people, and they're growing every single month. And a lot of them are growing, by double digits. Mm-hmm. And so like if I think in terms of what they're accomplishing in terms of revenue, passive income, most of them right now, after being involved with our revenue share group and EXP, of course, in less than 2.5 years, are able to essentially replace their income. And they don't stop selling real estate, because that's the thing that's interesting that happens is once you start having enough money coming in that you don't ever actually have to worry about money anymore. In other words, how would it feel, listeners? And this isn't just some, pie in the sky thing. This is really happening. You could, and I've seen this happen. We've directly experienced this with, really at this point, dozens, maybe even hundreds of people in our group. When you get to the point where you're starting to generate passive income through revenue share, and you start to realize that you can actually have passive income sufficient enough to cover all your personal bills, once you essentially have that emotional connection to that thought, your life changes. Because then all of a sudden you start getting that sense of freedom that you didn't maybe even conceive that you could ever have. That's the miracle of what Glenn Sanford created with revenue share.
Yes, but here's the thing, Tim. You gave some great examples of people who have actually, some fairly heavy hitters who have been able to replace their regular income, their real estate income, with their EXP income, and of course continue to sell real estate. However, you don't have to sponsor hundreds of people to have to really move the needle for yourself personally.
My friend Kevin Contrell, for example, I think he's 10 people, and his overall group now has grown to 1,800 people, for example.
Because those 10 people branched out and branched out
right,
and branched
exactly.
out. But he personally sponsored 10, give or take.
And his whole group now, because, he sponsored a couple people that sponsored this,
Sure.
Basically it just snowballed to the point now where he may even have closer to 2,000 than 1,800. And I know, but the thing is, Jules, you and I know lots of people like that.
Sure.
They'll sponsor maybe 15 or 20 people. And the groups continue to grow, because like I said, EXP in itself is growing by, I think EXP, if I remember correctly, it's growing by something like over 7% per month net. Mm-hmm. Okay. So naturally, if you just start sponsoring a couple people here and a couple people here, then your group is going to start to grow without you. And that's something that really boggles the mind when people see it and experience it. Mm-hmm. And I didn't completely understand it. I had never experienced anything like the closest thing we did was rental property.
Well, I know, which took years and years to have the same impact. But so I think the point that you're making, because agents talk to each other and they may hear, well, I've got 1,500 people in my group. That does not mean that you had 1,500 phone calls, coffees, lunch meetings, or anything. It means you probably sponsored 8, 10, 12 people who then did the same thing that you did, and you didn't have to talk to all 1,500 people. You had to talk to your core people, who some of them you probably did transactions with. You've known them for years. A lot of this, actually, here's the amazing thing. I've seen a change from a couple years ago where they were still lingering, what's EXP, tell me about EXP, to now what happens is when you yourself join EXP, the agents you've done deals with, your agent friends, will ask you why you decided to make that decision.
You're giving a great example. So I just had somebody that joined under us. Mm-hmm. His first name is John. His last name starts with U. He's a podcast listener, so I'm not going to.
Sure.
And so he'd been listening to our podcast. Mm-hmm. I wanted Tim and Julie to sponsor me, so I talked to him. This actually happened while we were on our sojourn here. Mm-hmm. He joins EXP. He's moved his license. He's active. he's already basically, because he had some listings that he brought over, he's already essentially paid his cap, which is amazing. So it's like first couple transactions that went into contract right away. He's essentially basically already, they're in contract so that to close by the end of, say, August or September or whatever. And anyway, long story short, and then he basically messages me and he says, Tim, I know you and Julie are on vacation with Zoe. I've been watching you guys on Instagram. But I knew I was going to have some agents from it was a Keller Williams office that were going to want to follow me over, but I underestimated the number of people that were going to want to follow me over.
Isn't that interesting?
I didn't realize because he had sponsored, this is what he told me, at Keller Williams, because remember Keller Williams has a profit share model. He told me, I'm going to get my numbers wrong. Forgive me, John, if I have, but I think he said he sponsored something like 25 people at Keller Williams after, I don't know, this was like 5 years or something. And he said, basically all those agents are going to want to follow him over to EXP. And then what he said he wasn't expecting is that the agents that were top producers similar to what he is, because he's an absolute machine, he said those agents too now are contacting him and say, hey, I noticed you moved over to EXP. Let's talk about it.
That's right.
And so that's the thing that's happened that's way different than it was like, when Julie and I joined.
That's fueling the momentum because it's not just happening to John. It's happening to so many people.
Right. Now people, like agents are not, they're EXP curious. Like I said, everyone's EXP curious. You got into real estate. There's all kinds of varieties of, huge swaths of reasons why. But the essence was you got into real estate to be financially free. You got into real estate so that maybe one day, somehow, hopefully, you could have enough income coming in that you could really have the life that you've always dreamed of. Well, I mean, not to be snarky, but how's that working out? Because the reality of it is that real estate can be a brilliant, unbelievable gift, but it also can be a huge curse. And the thing that makes it a curse is the fact that it is one of these industries that is so beholden to the ebbs and flows of the markets, right?
That's right.
And so, for example, right now we're in this housing boom, and we're going to be in this housing boom for some time to come. And Julie and I did a bunch of podcasts on why there is no real estate bust on the horizon. But there's going to be a point where prices are going to start to slow down. If inflation's going to, sort of level off, we're expecting that. You and I, read about this. Probably 2023, we're going to start seeing inflation level off to 4-6%. But certainly for the next 18 months, you're going to see a really nutsy market where, this year houses in a lot of cases are going to go up by 20-30%. In some markets, we have coaching clients that are going up by, 100%. It's incredible.
Right. It's amazing.
And so everyone's benefiting from this housing boom, but it will reverse. And the agents who have only been selling real estate in a market like this, they're going to be essentially not knowing how to basically adjust and pivot. And I mean, that's what happens in the real estate market. So if you've done, and this is what happened during the last housing crash, and some of these people, frankly, our business took off as a result of the housing crash because people were saying, I want to figure out how to actually run a profitable real estate business so that when there is another correction in the housing market, I'm not going to be taken aback to the point where I'm going to lose all my,
it was
my
a
assets.
craving for skill and education at the same time.
Right. So now I think we have a runway here of, maybe 18 to 24 months, maybe 36 months before there's another notable real estate correction. And any of you who've lived through that real estate, turnaround back in 07 through 09, why don't you really seriously think about this, what's happening now, as a blessing, make the most of the blessing, and then figure out other ways to create other streams of income. And EXP is frankly the one that requires the least risk and really honestly, like I mentioned real estate. Julie and I have dozens of real estate properties in dozens of states. And we've been married for 30 years, and we've been acquiring these properties for the last, 30 years. And we bought our first house when we were 22 and 23. And all of those properties, all but 4, I think, maybe 5, are paid off.
Yes.
And so for us to accomplish that, we had to sacrifice a ton. We had to we had people in our peer group, our friends, that were going on vacations and they were buying this and they're doing this and the other thing. Whereas Julie and I were staying drilled down and always buying rental properties. We were always staying focused, not on lifestyle, but on buying rental properties because our goal is to be financially free by the time I was 40 and Julie was 39. And it took me 41 and Julie was 40. But the moral of the story is we accomplished that goal. But the amount of work and effort, and still, Julie manages the property managers in all these different states. The amount of work to go, we don't manage them. We have managers that manage them. We manage.
You still have to manage the managers.
You have to manage the managers, and it's insane, really. I mean, it's crazy. And now you're looking at all the rising property taxes.
Every time there's an ice storm in the Midwest, I know that my next 2 or 3 days is going to be talking to property managers who are fixing things,
Exactly.
cleaning gutters, fixing flooded basements. You know,
Right.
it's not, I would say it's relatively passive, but in comparison, it's absolutely not passive.
No, we're thrilled we have the assets, especially when you see
Sure.
the inflation that's happening right now in real estate.
But that wasn't guaranteed when we did it either.
No, we didn't buy them for appreciation. We bought them for cash flow. That was our goal. We bought properties for cash flow because we wanted to get to the point where we were, by our definition of rich, where our money worked for us and we no longer worked for our money. And that's the path that most of you are following as well, thinking you have to accumulate more rental properties so that you basically can live off the cash flow of your rental properties. Well, you can, but what I'm here to suggest to you humbly is that you maybe put that one on as a plan B and focus on the revenue share as a plan A, because the revenue share has no expense against it. When you sponsor somebody at EXP and they sponsor and they sponsor and they sponsor, you're not having to service that agent. You're not having to,
you might not even know them.
Right.
Most of them, you know, when you talk about somebody that personally sponsors 15, but whose group has grown over 2 or 3 years to 1,500, you're not having to, personally nurture or coach all 1,500. Now, you want to be there when they have questions and you want
Sure.
to, be part of the family, but it's not like a rental property.
But let's talk about that too.
Sure.
So what's the job of a sponsor at EXP? It's to obviously help you along your way and sort of, obviously be your sponsor, help you sponsor other people. And that's the reason that Julie and I created our revenue share group. And if you want to learn more about our revenue share group, just go to whylibertas.com or just text EXP to, I don't remember, 47372. Yeah. Text the letters EXP to 47372 and we'll text you back a link and you can check out whylibertas.com and watch the videos that are at the top of the website. That's just watch those 2 videos. There's 2 videos that, one is essentially a bunch of Libertas agents that are explaining why they joined Libertas, why they joined EXP. And the next video is explaining the whole EXP model, but you can then check out the rest of the content on whylibertas.com. But this is something right now that I hope and pray all of you, at least, I in my mind, I always try to speak to the dissenters, but the truth is there's not it doesn't really exist anymore. The people that are anti-EXP in any way are broker owners or franchise owners who are stuck in their situations and they would love to switch over, but they usually can't.
That's right.
And that's really usually what it is.
Yeah, but that's a small percent. Okay. I think there's not as many. I don't even think there are dissenters. I think that there's procrastinators.
Yeah, I think you're right. It's like no, it's not never no, it's just no, not right now.
Right. And we understand that you're in the thick of it and most of you have really killer momentum right now. But think about how doing the same thing that you're doing now, being in that momentum and having lots of listings and closings and all of your different sides that you're doing has more value with EXP. You literally have more ways of creating income from what you are already doing. I think that's the difference for the procrastinators who know they understand the model. They're just waiting to pull the trigger.
Well, I remember, for example, Colette McDonald, right?
Sure.
And she's somebody we've coached forever. Mm-hmm. And she was in Buckhead in northern part of Atlanta where we visited.
Brookhaven, but close to Brook.
Sorry, yeah.
Same
beautiful
neighborhood.
area, amazing area.
Yes.
And she's
top producing RE/MAX agent.
HGTV star. I mean,
Sure.
she's an icon.
Yeah.
Really, she is.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, she's literally an icon at EXP, but she's an icon in the industry.
Mm-hmm.
And Colette was somebody who was one of these agents who, and this was 2 years ago, maybe more than that. Don't talk to me about EXP. I don't want to hear about EXP. And the reason that she was saying that is because she didn't understand the model. And she even went as far as to say, and this maybe was the case back then, in my market, there's not a lot of top producing or any top producing agents that are over at EXP. I mean, I'm with RE/MAX and RE/MAX with, I have lots of awards and plaques and recognition.
Yeah, number one at lots of things.
Right. She was very much intertwined into that brand. But what she did not understand is the financial ramifications on the positive side and on the negative side of her staying on the course that she was on.
Right.
And she's somebody who I think of all the time, truthfully, when I think about EXP and how thankfully I am for the opportunity that we were given to present people like Colette and all of our other great coaching clients to it. Because now she's accumulated over, I'm not going to say the actual number because I haven't asked her permission. She's significantly well off now versus where she was just 2 years ago.
Very much moved the needle.
Yeah, very much. I mean, we can also, she's a multimillionaire now.
Yes.
Because of her involvement with EXP. Will that happen to you? No. I mean, she was awarded stock when the stock, I mean, all these different things.
Well, and would she, I mean, she's a producer. She's motivated. Would she have eventually gotten there? I believe so.
Definitely.
But how many years more quickly did she do it because she made that decision?
Yeah, and she's exactly my age. She and I are exactly. She's 51. I'm 51. She'll kill me when I say that because
She's bigger than you too.
She doesn't look 51 at all.
No, not
But
at all.
I mean, when I think about Colette, I think about like where's she going to be in like 5 years. I mean, it's incredible.
Gonna have a heck of a lot more options.
And then I think about other people too that we've sponsored. I mean,
Sure.
I think of like, well, I'll mention this name too. He wouldn't mind. I know he wouldn't mind. Eric Orland.
Yeah.
So Eric Orland was somebody I didn't know. And Eric Orland was introduced to you and I. He was in Miami, and he was very, great background in the professional world, smart, just unusual for the
Sure.
real estate world, right? But he had basically just come through a really bad financial hardship, and he was really on his heels financially, if not completely falling out and sitting on his butt, basically.
Sure.
And he was what he had been essentially many people had talked to him about joining EXP. He used to own a mortgage company, basically. And many people have asked him to join EXP. And it wasn't until we, again, had a conversation with him where we explained to him what Libertas was all about, where we explained to him basically what he's going to be able to create, what it's going to mean to him financially. And we laid it all out for him. And I will bet, I can almost guarantee you, like, and he's personally sponsored since he's been at EXP. He's been at EXP probably 2 years. I think he's sponsored, I'll have to check. I think he's sponsored maybe 30 people personally in 2 years, maybe more, but I think it's right around that number.
Okay.
And I bet you by the end of this year, he's going to have over 1,000 people in his group. So he's sponsored approximately 30 people. And by the end of this year, he's going to have over 1,000 people. Now, what that means in terms of passive income is I'm not going to give an actual number, but because I don't think we're supposed to, but the actual income that he'll be earning from a revenue share will be, I mean, I don't know how else to say it without saying it. Probably at the very least 40,000, but probably more like 60,000 per month. There's variables that enter into it, but the reality of it is that's somebody who basically was reluctant to join EXP, had been, other people talked to him about it. We explained to him why we were interested in it, why we joined, why we aligned, why we did it. And then we've had so many other conversations just like that. And we're interested in having that conversation with you. And the reason that we're motivated to do this is, yes, we have a financial interest in you joining EXP with our group, but you've got to understand the experience that we're really looking to have. And if you've been listening to Julie and I for years on our podcast, which this is over 2,000 shows, we've had over 10 million downloads. This is the #1 daily listened to podcast for real estate agents in at least the United States. If you've been listening to us for a long period of time, you know that our heart and soul has always been with the betterment of real estate agents. I mean, we weren't just saying we're agent-centric. We clearly were, and we clearly are. But EXP so perfectly continues what we really, or what our life mission was, is in creating a financial alternative and a financial future that will give you that sense of freedom that most agents, even the best agents in the face of planet Earth, can never accomplish on their own. And that's something you've got to basically... Now, here's another thought that came to mind. Some people will say, well, the ship has sailed. It's too late. Well, because there's 50,000, 59,000 agents. Well, the projections, and we're going to get to it. I don't want to spoil Julie's show for tomorrow. But this Sean, this financial guy, is projecting that EXP is going to have something like 500,000 agents within the next 5 years. And if you looked at projections, just even if growth slows, that's a pretty
astonishing.
That's astonishing, right? So
and that's probably not even accounting for, maybe it is, for the massive amount of newer agents that are coming in that have to make a decision. A lot of those newer agents don't have the previous thoughts in their head. They just look at what's the best model for me, and it's clearly the best choice.
Exactly. And again, we're seeing 1.5 million members of National Association of Realtors. Yes. You and I predicted accurately mid last year that there was going to be a massive increase in the number of new licensees, and there is, and there will even be more so over the next 6 months as more agents are taking and passing their tests.
And we're seeing an influx of more experienced agents and brokers and teams coming over, which was different than maybe 2 or 3 years ago. And we're also seeing literally the global expansion of EXP.
Right. And EXP is in different countries. So guys, this is what it feels like to be at the very start, not quite maybe the start, but I would say pretty darn near the start of something that's a global phenomenon. This is like a movement that at the end of the day agents, if they understand what they have as an opportunity, you will still want to sell real estate. You'll still want to be incredibly successful selling real estate. And in those conversations that you have with the agents that you're doing transactions with, a lot of them are going to be wanting to learn more about EXP. And of course, with our revenue share group called Libertas, we also teach you how to scale up your recruiting business if that's really what you want to focus on. If not, we're going to show you how to obviously build your real estate business. So that is all I have for today. How about you?
That's right. Well, time to make a decision.
Yeah, exactly. Well, so look, guys, you can go to whylibertas.com or just text EXP to 47372. But if you're ready to join EXP and you're just looking for the right sponsor, do this. Go to whylibertas.com. Check out what exactly it is that we're offering. And then if you're ready to join, if you've not promised that someone else can be your sponsor, please text me directly at 512-758-0206. Text me directly at 512-758-0206. We are on the road. We are doing a lot of things while we're on the road, visiting with different people, and obviously expanding our what do you want to call it? Not influence necessarily, but expanding our experiences.
Yes.
But I'd love to talk with you guys anytime about EXP, but please do check out Why Libertas first and watch those 2 videos. In the meantime, we're going to finish off the series on EXP tomorrow, and you guys have a fantastic day.
This program has been a presentation by Tim and Julie Harris, Real Estate Coaching. For more information on our real estate coaching and training programs, visit our website at timandjulieharris.com. Remember to tune in weekdays at noon for upcoming shows, and until next time, thank you for listening to Real Estate Coaching Radio with Tim and Julie Harris.
This podcast is a part of the C-Suite Radio Network. For more top business podcasts, visit c-suiteradio.com.